This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, John Rauta back with episode 106 of A Geek Leader podcast. And today on the show, we've got Paresh Shah. Paresh Shah has a Harvard MBA. He's also got a technical background when it comes to engineering, aerospace engineering at that. We talk a little bit about that. We also talk about his entrepreneurship endeavors. He's the founder of the Non-Obvious Company, and he's given a lot of leadership advice and coaching. He's spoken at South by Southwest. He's given a TEDx talk. Done lots of fantastic things. We talk about the 7 deadly blind spots for technical talent. We talk about gearhead strengths. We talk about his lifter leadership program and mindfulness. We talk about communication. We talk about lots and lots and lots of cool stuff. He was a great guest. He also has a special offer for his gearhead program for Geek Leader listeners. So check that out in the show notes at geekleader.com/Paresh Shah. And I'll link that up. You can also check that out on any of your podcast players. Just click on the show notes. The link is right there. You can click on it and go check that out. But anyway, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate having Paresh on the show, and I know you guys are really going to dig this one. It was just a wonderful conversation. So give it up for Paresh Shah.
Once a geek, always a geek, John. Hey, it's a pleasure to be with you and your audience today. So I started off after school. Let's put it this way. How did I get into this? Typically, if you're an Indian, I was born in India, and I came to the D.C., Maryland area when I was 1. Born on the 4th of July in Washington, D.C., and I tell my Californian friends now, I'm more American than you. But anyway, as an Indian kid, I kind of joke about this. I pretty much had 3 choices. I could be a doctor like my dad, an engineer, or a disappointment. So I chose the middle one because I love solving problems. I love being creative. I love sort of the analytical systems approach to things. And as a kid, I was always inventing things and, building things and blowing things up and, really much into space, just like you. I went to the, in fact, I think, John, as you asked the question, it occurs to me when I was in 2nd grade, I went to the National Air and Space Museum, and it had just opened around that time. And I remember walking into there and seeing those rockets and the lunar modules and that pendulum on that first floor swinging. And the movie To Fly was the first IMAX movie. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Yeah. That, I believe if we were to put a pin in the moment I decided I wanted to be an engineer, now that you prompt me, actually I'm connecting it today, right now on your show, John Rauta. Being a 2nd grader, I think I was in 2nd grade. I don't have to look up when they were, but I was in elementary school and it had just opened. I think it was in that moment when I was in that museum and then I watched To Fly and actually felt what it felt like to fly, that the seeds were planted for me to be an engineer, a mechanical and aerospace engineer, in fact. So that's how I got started in it. And then, from there we progressed, evolved into a bunch of other things, including a business strategist, advisor, consultant. So I worked at what's now Northrop Grumman. It used to be Westinghouse Defense Electronic Systems. And so I had some really great, cool projects, a lot of secret stuff we worked on at the time. The first project that I was put on out of engineering school was to help build the AWACS radar system. Are you familiar with that one?
It sounds familiar. I'm familiar with Northrop Grumman because I have some family that lives up in Norfolk, and the shipyard's right there. And I know they've had contractors come in and out from that area. Yeah.
So the AWACS is, we talk about, I was listening to your TED Talk, and you were talking about creativity, and creativity doesn't necessarily need to be artistic, as you were saying. It's about creating, and we bring that to our clients as well. And so the AWACS was really a creative idea, which was that big I think it's a 707 or 747 with that big radar dome on top. It has that big dish
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that's the AWACS. And that was truly a breakthrough, non-obvious idea because before that, they had, point radar systems in the F-16s and in the front of various aircraft. And then they had ground radar systems like we see at airports where we have those big ground-based radar systems that are spinning around. And someone genius, probably called crazy by a lot of people, said, hey, what if we were to take one of those big things that we have on the airports and stick it on an airplane and stick it up in the air, and we would have a much broader view of the landscape of whatever the situation is in battle. And they actually did it, and that airplane, as I recall, could monitor 80,000 cubic miles of airspace, and from there you could have your commanders up in that aircraft, giving direction to either the Navy forces, Army forces, etc. So that was really exciting, and I worked on a bunch of cool stuff: radar for the F-16, countermeasure systems. So I became a super geek, loved it, and then I wanted to get a bigger picture. I was working on a card, a chip on a card, in a module, in a box, in a radar system that went in an F-16 that would fight the battle. And I found myself asking questions like, well, why are we fighting in the first place? and my managers are like, build the card, dude, build the module. And so I read a book called In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters. It was the first business book I read when I was in my engineering job. And it really fascinated me because this fellow, Tom Peters, ex-McKinsey partner, searched the world to find the great companies and what made them great. What's the DNA of greatness? And it was really fascinating to me, this whole world of business. So I applied to business schools and was fortunate enough to get into Harvard Business School, and went there. And, here's a geek who's never, really done, market analysis or spreadsheets or strategy. And I really loved it. And I found I had a real knack for it. So from there, I ended up going to one of the leading management consulting companies and worked in a variety of industries, a lot of technical industries, in helping them, find ways to be more competitive. I work with a great guy named Michael Porter.
Oh yeah, I know Michael Porter. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was the founder of Monitor Company where I worked, and he and 5 other Harvard Business School professors started this company. And, they really wanted to create something different from the other great companies like McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and Bain. They were kind of like the Saturn version within General Motors of consulting. And it was really great. So that was a great experience. And through that, then my wife and I went backpacking for a year because I'm all about adventure in life. And while we were backpacking, I got inspired to break off on my own and started my own firm, and then have been an entrepreneur building companies as we've recognized opportunities in the marketplace through our consulting and our ability to see markets, see trends, kind of see where the white space is, or what would be called blue ocean spaces where there's opportunities. So I built several companies over the years as an entrepreneur or co-founder, so it's sort of a meld of the engineering, the business geek, being a leadership, innovation, team engagement, and sort of a strategist, workshop, and coaching provider. And through that, it's led me to where we are today, which is it's just a really exciting place to be, because people are finally understanding, as you do, that it's about melding creativity with products, with market opportunities, and ultimately it's about how do we bring perspective and teamwork into purpose to create great things that solve our big problems. So that's where I am today. I run a company called Lifter Leadership, And that's a spin out of another company I'm a founder of called the Non-Obvious Company. And the Non-Obvious Company is really, it's an innovation company that helps organizations and individuals think in non-obvious ways to solve their biggest problems, because obvious thinking doesn't work. As you know, in engineering or anything, you need to be non-obvious. And so that's kind of where we are. And it's a meld of my geekness, my businessness, my technical, my creative side. And then recently, mindfulness, because I've also found myself as a yogi, and I teach yoga, meditation, mindfulness, manifestation. And the world is now ready to bring all these things together, much like you talk about in your TED Talk.
No, yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's one of the areas that at least our listeners are really longing for, is to learn about how do you take that engineering mindset that you kind of learned in school or learned by tinkering and playing around and building stuff, and apply the leadership principles. Because as you move higher into your career and you become a manager or a team lead or a director or vice president or whatever, and you have people that report to you, it becomes less about the technical chops and more about the EQ and the HQ that I've heard you talk about before. And how do we get to that place? And that's where I think a lot of the things that you've been working with and learning through, and the fact that you've done it before, you've gone from that technical engineer side to getting involved in leadership and entrepreneurship and all those things like that. And it seems like a natural progression from engineering into leadership and entrepreneurship.
And there's been struggles along the way, no doubt. And so part of what we are really excited about currently is one of the areas where we're doing a lot of coaching, consulting, and training is with a new service that's called Gearhead to Grouphead Leadership Academy. And what we've done is we've taken our learnings, myself, my business partner, who's a scientist, PhD, worked in a variety of major scientific endeavors like the Human Genome Project, etc. And we've sort of looked back at our own careers from being gearheads, essentially geeks, IT geeks, engineering geeks, scientific geeks, into what we call group heads. And we've gone through that progression from being a sole contributor to a project manager, to a supervisor, to, vice presidents, to CEOs. And now I'm an advisor to, global CEOs. And also looking at our 25 years of working with technically oriented companies, small and large. And we've realized that there are some patterns that keep people from making a bigger contribution, from innovating, and from progressing in their own career. So we've created what we call the Gearhead to Grouphead Leadership Academy. And what we found is basically we've constructed it as a 7-7-7 transformation model. What we found is gearheads, geeks and nerds, typically have what we call 7 great gearhead strengths. We're great problem solvers. We're analytical. We're critical thinkers. We're inventive. We can work independently. We're detail oriented, and we're action oriented. So those are the 7 great gearhead strengths that most people, most of your audience, probably recognize in themselves. Problem solving, analytical capabilities, critical thinking, being inventive, working independently, being action oriented, and being detail oriented. So we wouldn't be in our careers unless we had an affinity for that and loved that, or were really good at least some of those or most of those.
Right.
However, from the psychology world, from the mindfulness world, and from the leadership world that we've also been serving in for decades now, often with our strengths come blind spots. And we have identified what we call the 7 career deadly blind spots, which actually keep people from succeeding and moving forward in their career, from being innovative, or simply from being respected, etc. And they often are career stoppers, especially when we look at the fact that every year, John, there are 8.3 million new science, technology, and engineering and math students being cranked out around the world. 8.3 million new, hungry, smart, agile, super fast learning new geeks being created every year. And so you can't rely strictly on your technical capacity if you want to, one, simply survive. Two, if you want to move up and have greater responsibilities, income, and respect. And so we've identified what we call these 7 career deadly blind spots. Do you want to hear what some of them are and see what your response is and see what?
Yeah. Let's unpack those and let me see if there's any of my old bosses or leaders that I've experienced in the past. Have these these bad qualities.
That's part of what we do in our training course. Is we actually say, as we name each of these, think about if you've had a past leader or supervisor who's had these qualities, and think about how that made you feel. Think about the impact it had on your productivity, on the company's success, on innovation, on engagement. And it's really, and we actually ask people to, put their initials in their workbooks or maybe even draw a sketch of that individual, because we've all had them. And it's a really great exercise. So let's go through them, and I'll pause after each one for people to, kind of go back in their time capsules, or even today go, oh my God, I've got that right now. You have no idea. I'm like, yes, we do. I have that idea. So here we go. The 7 career deadly blind spots that we help people solve so that they can be a group head, a great inspiring leader, a successful entrepreneur, and a non-obvious innovator, which every company needs. Ready to go, John?
Let's go.
Blind spot number 1, gearheads, when they move into some sort of leadership or management, tend to be micromanagers.
Yes. And I have a theory behind why that is. And it's because we always feel like we can do things a little bit better than the people that are there. Either that or we don't trust them. I'm not sure. One of those two.
Yeah, absolutely. And often when one of the exercises we do in our training, in our workshops, and we've got an online course now for people who, are all over the world, because we can't, just go everywhere to do these live workshops and coaching, is what we found is often if you take the strengths, for instance, of being detail-oriented, of being a critical thinker, of working independently, you take those 3 together, and that's a recipe for being a micromanager. Yeah. Right? It's like, okay, John, Rauda, I want you to do it this way. And have you looked into this and check this out? And I want you to, and it's like, wait a minute, give people some freedom, give them some space, give them some autonomy. So micromanagement is a major, major issue. So for your listeners, think about what it feels like to have been micromanaged, or when you're micromanaged today. It's suffocating, and it doesn't inspire greatness within you. So that's one of the 7 career deadly blind spots that geeks have. Ready for the next one?
Yeah. Give us another one.
Poor communications.
Yes. Yeah. And, I have to go through this with a lot of my, even my most talented people on my team. We have to talk about communications on a regular basis, about how to, some people, it's keeping things short and concise and to the point and not being so verbose. Other people, It's using the proper language, like non-technical terms when talking to someone non-technical. Some it's as simple as just replying on the same medium that the question was asked. It's very confusing sometimes when someone sends you an email and you reply to them on Slack, and they're kind of not correlating because they sent, the email last night, and now they're getting a Slack message. They're not exactly sure what it's for. But yeah, communication is definitely one of the biggest challenges that I see coming out of the software development and IT engineering community.
Absolutely. And so what we teach around this is there's the message, there's the moment, and there's the medium. And we help people understand how to be great communicators. Often, the number one skill, if there's anything your audience can take away, and this is a geek problem, listening. Listening. And so we actually teach people very specific skills around the message, the moment that you communicate, and the medium that you use, as well as the languaging of that. So poor communications, and that's the number one complaint as we work with CEOs and major organizations around the world. The major complaint in employee surveys and assessments is that people feel that there's poor communications from their supervisors.
So when it comes to the listening, do you think it's because a lot of people are trying to formulate their response and they're not really like paying attention, or what is it that we can do to be a better listener?
It's a great question. That is certainly part of it. Getting back to being a critical thinker as one of our great strengths as gearheads. Critical thinkers want to be right. We're taught to argue for, hey, I think this should have a factor of safety of 2.5, and I think we should use a composite material. And I've done my research, and it's often we win in our academic lives and in our early careers by being right. We get rewarded by being right. And so often when we're listening, we're formulating how we can be right rather than simply creating the space of listening, which is so powerful. And there's skills to how to do that, for sure. So absolutely, it's formulating your next point, trying to be right, or simply not giving people the space to articulate themselves without immediately jumping to conclusions, asking questions, and letting people articulate where they are. And if we simply allow them that time, we may not have those questions, and we're giving them again that autonomy to present their own creative solutions, which may not be the same as yours. And frankly, that's what you want if you want to be a great innovator, which is what group heads that we create end up being.
Okay.
Ready for the next?
Yeah, give us another one. Yep.
Okay. Lack of customer centricity.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So explain what you mean by that.
Okay, there's a couple of things that we found in our work with geeks and leaders. Number one, often technical talent nearly has a disdain for the salespeople. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, those salespeople have no idea like what they really need, or oh, those customers. And we get very enthralled and excited about the technical sophistication of the project or problem we have. And we really lose touch with that customer need, the ultimate customer need. Now you can see how that would also connect with poor communications, right? Because if we can listen well, communicate and elicit from our salespeople, our product managers, or our customers, and what their needs are, and listen well and inquire, with the right medium, in the right moment, with the right message, then we can be attuned to what their real needs are and then align our technical tasks to that. However, most geeks tend not to be as connected to what the ultimate customer's need is, and that presents great problems, and it creates great cost wastage, time wastage, frustration, and often we lose customers as a result of the geeks sort of inventing their thing without a holistic view of what the customer.
Yeah, I know one of the things that I recall back in my earlier software development days is that we would build an application thinking this is the absolute best way that this customer should use this application. And it's like we built them a front door, but every customer went through the window. Is because we never talked to the customer about how they actually use the software. We just built it the way we think they should use it.
Exactly. Well, this actually leads me to an interesting observation. This will date me a little bit, but the example really speaks to this. Often there's focus groups around, what do customers need, and they'll bring, a variety of marketing folks in, advertising folks in, sometimes technical folks, but often not, because they feel that they'll embarrass them. Yeah. And so there was a focus group done back in the days of boom boxes. Remember boom boxes?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. By the way, in the non-obvious company that I run, we predict the future. We make predictions, and we have a best-selling book called Non-Obvious, where we every year predict 15 non-obvious trends. And so we're actually predicting a lot. We've predicted a lot of this is going to be coming back. A lot of these retro products like, vinyl records, paper books, and things like that. So there was a focus group with a bunch of teenagers for boom boxes. So they had all these teenagers in there, and it was one of the major boombox providers, and they're like, what do you want in a boombox? And these kids are all sharing their thoughts on, well, I think they should be some pink ones. We think that there should be some lights on them. It'd be cool if there was a Hello Kitty version of it, etc. And so there was a lot of feedback that this team was really excited to get around different color assortments and different flashy, lighting and Hello Kitty features and things like that. And so, they took copious notes, and the advertising agency was so excited to look good with their client because they had brought this group of teenagers in to give their feedback. And so, people are like, oh, we want some blue ones. How about some, ones with, glitter on them, etc. And so the takeaway from that session was, they needed a variety of SKUs that would have different colors and features and functions. So when the focus group was done, they said, well, thank you very much. You've had your free pizza. We appreciate your time. And as a gesture of our thanks, as you leave today, we've got a bunch of boom boxes out in the hallway. Feel free to take one home with you. And guess what they all did, John?
They took the plain one.
They took the black one.
Yeah.
So this is what we mean by lack of customer centricity. First of all, it's getting into the space of your customers. Secondly, it's listening to them. And thirdly, it's truly observing them with a keen eye to see what's non-obvious between what's being shared and what their observable behaviors are. And geeks, gearheads, tend not to have that as a natural skill, so we equip them with that in our Gearhead to Group Head Leadership Academy. Ready for the next one?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, missing the human business trade-offs.
Yeah, I can totally find myself falling into that trap repeatedly. When I'm looking at, we can save so much time by doing this, and not thinking about the person that's going to be affected by this change.
Yep. The business trade-offs around cost, around speed to market, the human trade-offs around, hey, we've got a team now that we are leaders, supervisors, VPs of engineering. These are real humans. They have lives. They have families. They're not spreadsheets. They're not computer code that you can command to just do what you want to do. And so that's a very deep blind spot that often, causes, people hitting a wall in their career. And related to that's the next one, John, which is weak conflict management. Gearheads don't know how to manage conflict well.
Yeah, I think that goes back to, it's a lot of things. We don't know how to manage conflict because one, no one's ever taught us.
Exactly.
Two, a lot of times, I don't know why this is. If this happens to be, just the people that are drawn towards technology and engineering, or if it's a result of being involved in technology and engineering. But introversion is a real thing that I see a lot of people in my audience, and I suffer from it as well. I shouldn't say suffer from it. It's just the way I am. I'm more introverted. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to have that difficult conversation or to handle conflict properly because I'm not sure what to do with my emotions or how I feel about this. And,
exactly.
It's difficult.
And it makes it very difficult to relate to others, particularly when you are under some sort of stress, because when we are under stress, a whole bunch of natural instincts, reactions, responses come about, just the way we're wired as humans, which often exacerbates the situation. And to your point, if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs, most engineers, not most, but many engineers are, I seem to recall the INTP personality type, which is the, introvert, intuitive, thinking, perceiving. And if you mash them up with, an ESF, whatever the other one is, J, then, it's kind of oil and water unless you learn to be an effective conflict manager. And you have to, because frankly, a lot of times people get stuck in their career, not because of this only happening with the people they're supervising, but with their bosses. If you can't manage conflict with your boss or listen well and understand the human business trade-offs, even for your bosses and supervisors, that's career deadly. I mean, it's you're dead. And we help people come up with we have very specific skills and practices that help you when you're in that situation go, okay, let me fall back on what I learned in the Gearhead to Group Head Academy. One of them, very simply, I'll give you a hint so we're not just teasing you, is we have a process called the name, engage, bypass subroutine. So when you feel a certain impulse, and we help people tune into their body awareness around how they're feeling and their intuition to go, okay, this is happening. Then you come up with a subroutine, which is, okay, I can name what's happening right now. I can bypass it, or I can engage it. And parents should learn this. You're a dad, right, John?
Yes. 3 kids.
Okay. I've got 4. And what I used to default into was the engage routine, which is, kids doing something, on the computer, they've been told not to or whatever. And I would engage with my kids, say, hey, why are you doing this? We talked about this, blah, 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 blah. And then it would escalate into a conflict. And there are 2 other strategies. One is to bypass it and just go, you know what? Let's just let this go and see what happens. It's not the end of the world. And frankly, I found myself many times, deeply embarrassed because, I thought my kid was, watching YouTube or, watching some sort of, just crass stuff on YouTube, when in fact he was learning how to program, how to do animation. And I'm like, I want him to do that. He was doing like really cool research on, how he could take his skills to a new level. So that's bypass. And then the third strategy is one that few people use in their relationships and in business, and it's simply called name without engaging. So it'd be like, hey, I noticed, that you've been late for the past couple of meetings, and I just wanted to, point that out, but let's move on without getting into a whole, hey, why is that happening? I told you that, blah, 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 blah. Let's come up with a plan. And so that's a very simple technique that we share, is the name, engage, bypass subroutine, to go, in which situation do you pick one or the other? Because typically geeks want to engage, and that's often not helpful.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I've learned a lot of that. We recently did a positive parenting course not too long ago. I can't remember the exact name of it or who it's by, but in that they talked a lot about, when siblings are arguing, what is the first thing I want to do is jump in there and, fix the problem, have them say, sorry. And,
right.
But a lot of times if you just back up and let them handle it, just observe what they're actually doing versus what you heard or what you thought, and just observe for a little while, you realize that they can handle it themselves and they can figure it out themselves. Yeah. And I like that idea of just, pointing out that you're not oblivious to the fact that they're coming in late, but not necessarily correcting it. Let them have the opportunity to fix it themselves.
Right. Don't make it a big deal, because then, people feel embarrassed. They feel you're shaming them, etc. And in the parental situation that you described, John, so many, and part of what I've learned to just do this bypass thing, and I give this as a practice to all of your listeners, because it really works. One thing I learned was, if I want to go, hey, why'd you hate your sister? You shouldn't do that. You should apologize. Half the time, the 2 of them, and often the other 2, end up turning on me. You ever have that happen? Where it's like,
absolutely. Then they both think daddy's the bad guy.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm just trying to help you. Well, you're not being helpful. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what happened here? And so one of the practices that I teach in the mindfulness work and in our yogic practices around meditation, and really how do we be mindful in our work, because it creates great focus, great creativity, great productivity when we have mindfulness, is I actually did this with one of my clients. Was he tends to correct his daughter like all the time. Like we kind of, we joke about it as our family, to go, oh my God, he's kind of like overboard. And so I said, let's just try this, because I've tried it before, which is, whenever we feel the impulse to correct, give some advice, make a suggestion, be helpful. I said, for the next 48 hours, let's not do it, because watch what happens. And so I'm suggesting to your listeners, watch what happens when you want to give advice, correction, etc. Watch what happens and keep your mouth closed. And so I said, whenever you do that, send me an SMS. This is one of my coaching clients, with a little thumbs up emoticon saying, you know what? Kept my mouth closed. Kept my mouth closed. I did it. And watch what happens. And this guy was off the charts going, oh my God, this worked out. That worked out. I didn't say anything. And exactly what I wanted to happen happened. And he started using it in his relationship with his girlfriend as well, because she was annoying him. He was going to point it out. And then, he knew that he made a commitment to me, because it's all about accountability, that he's going to keep his mouth shut. And he sent me a little thumbs up. And then a couple minutes later, he's like, oh my God, I was going to talk to her about these 3 things, and she suggested those things herself. So I strongly recommend to all of you, and when we give you our website, et cetera, we'll come up with an accountability, way to be accountable on this. We do this in our group coaching, where simply keep your mouth shut when you want to give a suggestion, and, send someone a little thumbs up emoticon saying, I did it. I kept my mouth shut. And then watch what happens. And I guarantee you at least 50%, and I'd wager 70% of the time, that issue will dissolve, go away, or be handled better than what you were going to suggest by the person that you were going to, get on their case about. It's a really cool technology.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're definitely hitting on something there, because what I found more recently now, I guess, than ever before, is there's such a correlation between good leadership and good parenting. There's so many crossovers and so many things. Like one of the things that when we went through during the class was, instead of telling your kids what to do and that they need to do this, they need to do that, just ask them what their plan is for, the thing that you want accomplished. And they'll come up with their own creative way of doing it. Exactly. And you're not telling them what to do. They're being able to do it themselves, and everybody's happy in the long run. So I've started using that at work. When something I see as a miss and isn't being done properly, I'll just say, hey, what is your plan for blank?
Exactly.
And they take care of it. And they do it usually in a way that I wouldn't have told them to do it, and it works out better.
And they feel they've had autonomy. They feel that they were able to express themselves. They feel some purpose behind this, rather than being a slave to someone's direction. And it helps them grow. So absolutely. The last 2 7 deadly blind spots that we help people overcome in our coaching and training is limited creativity and uninspiring leadership. Creativity is a huge issue with geeks, where we often are very creative when it comes to technical solutions, like, hey, you know what, why don't we use this type of code and, this sort of platform to, make the speed of our, website, of our platform faster. We're very good at technical creativity. However, we are very limited in creativity when it comes to the other dimensions of our work and our projects and our leading people. Like just now, this was a creative solution I just suggested. This is a creative solution you suggested, which is, hey, how would you handle this? That's creative, rather than let me, tell you how to do it. So limited creativity is a huge issue. And, given that I run the Non-Obvious Company, which is all about creativity and innovation, we bring some really great skills to geeks to help them be creative around recruiting, around motivating, around retaining their workers, around communicating with their supervisors in the most impactful way. So creativity applies to all aspects of what you do, not just your technical scope. And geeks often don't, get that.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think, and I always struggle with this, because I used to, I talked about it in my talk, creativity is not something that I ever considered myself being, but when I redefine what I thought creativity was versus what it really is,
that's right.
It opens up a lot of doors.
That's right. And you said it was in your TED Talk, it's about creation. It's not about, painting and dancing and music necessarily. However, if you have those gifts and interests as a geek, I strongly encourage you to meld the two. And when we talk about some of the upgrades, one of the upgrades we talk about is lifter leadership. within which we have 4 mind shifts. And one of them is to be a yes and person, where you can bring these gifts together into your professional endeavor and not keep them separate. I've got a lot of people that we coach and train that, are one way at work. And then you find out later that, for instance, I play electric guitar and I love rock and roll. I love all music, and I would never know that. And, that, particular client has a music gift or a artistic gift, and they can bring those into what they do at work to be far more successful. So, yeah. And then and we talked about uninspiring leadership, right? That's ultimately what the blind spots are. People just don't find geeks inspiring when they're stuck in these blind spots. Who wants to work for someone who's a micromanager, poor communicator, lacks customer centricity, misses that human business trade-off, doesn't know how to manage conflict, and there's limited creativity? Like, that's not inspiring. And so we teach people to be uninspiring leaders in what we call the 7 essential upgrades to become a group head and not just a gearhead.
Okay, so rattle those off for us real quick.
You bet. Okay. Lifter leadership, and we'll come back to that one. Which is the new paradigm of leadership that basically is rewriting the way that companies have been leading for the past 150 years. And companies around the world are getting that super fast. So we'll come back to that if we have time. The second upgrade, so these are what we call the 7 essential upgrades. It's kind of getting an upgrade to your operating system. And we teach people how to be a lifter leader, how to have productive dialogue, how to be a non-obvious innovator, e.g. creativity, how to have strategic agility, which is getting that big picture and being able to be fluid in that and not being rigid in your solutions. That's the 4th one, strategic agility. The 5th one is macro management, which is the opposite of micromanagement. The 6th one is even super more important, and we're getting so much interest from people wanting coaching and training just in this sphere, which is storytelling to inspire.
Yes, very good one.
And then the last one is what we call managing the human wild cards. Humans are wild cards. They're not predictable. You know what? Someone may go, I'm sick today. I can't come in. I wasn't able to do that. They could have a meltdown. They could be super creative and you not see that in them. And so those are what we call the 7 essential upgrades as part of our 777 gearhead to group head transformation model: lifter leadership, productive dialogue, non-obvious innovation, strategic agility, macro management, storytelling to inspire, and managing the human wildcards. And there's skills, very specific skills within each of these that are learnable, practicable, that will make you a rock star.
Yeah, no, all those sound like definitely things that us technical leaders need to learn if we don't have already, for sure.
Yep. The storytelling one in particular, and the lifter leadership one, is I'd like to touch on that. The storytelling one is one that we're having clients from, anyone, CEOs, heads of nonprofits, small business owners, students, realize it's all about storytelling, because we're competing for people's attention. Remember, we've realized people are not good listeners. There's poor communication. They're uninspiring. So we need to cut through and be a great storyteller, because we're competing with that YouTube video under the conference table that someone's watching. We're competing with the 3D IMAX, virtual reality experience that people are having outside of our work setting. And frankly, that's what they want. They want that high def, highly curated, really compelling content, because on the internet, you just move on when you get bored, right? You just abandon, move to your next video, your next experience. When you go to the THX, Dolby, IMAX, sensory experience, you're competing with people's expectation that they be moved, that they be inspired. And so we must be storytellers in every aspect of who we are as leaders. When we are presenting to our teams, when we're talking to customers, or even when we're in a one-on-one conversation trying to get extra resources, we have to be a storyteller to bring the facts together in a way that moves people. Because you know what the attention of a human is today, the attention span of a human?
Oh, probably not very much.
In 2012, the attention span of a human was 12 seconds. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Today, the attention span of a human is 8 seconds. Okay, do you know what the attention span of a goldfish is?
8 seconds.
9 seconds.
Oh man.
So, and I bet you, just given how fast things are changing in the world, I bet you that's even come down. So you need to be a compelling storyteller to inspire. And that's part of what we teach in this Lifter Leadership Upgrade, which really is the new framework for how to be a leader. Because if we use the old frameworks of command and control, I'm the boss, you're the worker, you need to have output for me, you need to work your butt off, that does not work with today's workers, especially. Older generations were willing to put up with it because it's just how it was. Today's generations, they want purpose. They want positivity. They command and demand you be authentic and have integrity with them. And they certainly relish when they're given the ability to shine their own creativity in whatever they're doing. And so this Lifter Leadership Paradigm, I've got a forthcoming book, which if your folks come over to the website and sign up, we'll give them some free excerpts when it comes out, covers what we call the 4 lifter mind shifts that every leader on this planet needs to learn. And frankly, if you don't evolve to be a lifter, you will be left in the dust. In my TEDx talk, which will also be on the website, I explain how we're now in a new era where the lifters are the new rock stars of the planet, just like the farmers during the agricultural revolution, just like the industrialists during the industrial revolution, they basically ruled the world, right? Carnegie, Rockefeller, just like the geeks and nerds like us and your listeners pretty much run the world. Like the greatest companies, like you can't do without geeks and nerds, and the greatest companies all came from that geek nerd mindset. Now the geeks and nerds were not respected early on. We were a bunch of weirdos that talked about weird things like HTML and computers, rather than, girls and cars sometimes, because we were such geeks. But then the companies that understood, hey, something's happening. This technology thing is happening. Computers are happening. This thing called the internet, we don't understand it, but we better bring these people in who know that stuff, who love that stuff, who have ideas about that stuff. And those companies now run the world. So that was the third evolution of humanity in recent times. And we are now in the midst of a fourth evolution. And that fourth evolution is about creativity, compassion, caring, cooperation, and the interconnectedness of everything and everyone. And it's a new era of consciousness. And I tell my CEOs that when I give my keynotes that this new era, this new time of consciousness is bigger than the internet. It's bigger than the information revolution. And those who get it, which are lifter leaders, are the new rock stars. They get it. And I call it the new wireless. So we have 4 specific mind shifts that we share. And it'll be on, some of the talks that we can direct your teams to. And the third mind shift is what I mentioned earlier, which is lifters bring out the yes and gifts of themselves and their teams. So
kind of like the improv.
Absolutely. Have you done improv?
Yeah, I've tried it once before at a conference where they had a little improv session that I went to. It was harder than I thought it would be, but definitely following the yes and made it a little bit helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And so we help people find that yes and quality in themselves and their teams. So for instance, before I had the choice of being a doctor, an engineer, or a disappointment. When I was in high school, I was in drama, and I was in speech and debate. I was in oration and rhetoric. I played guitar. I was in a band playing electric guitar, etc. And so that part of me kind of disappeared when I became a geek and an engineer at Northrop. It disappeared when I came out of Harvard Business School as a management consultant, very buttoned up with my PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets and, brilliant frameworks from people like Michael Porter or Clay Christensen or, any of these, rock stars of business. And as I've learned to embrace and then yoga and meditation, certainly, not in that space either. And what I found in my career, and what's working for all of my clients is when I bring these things together, it's super powerful. So what am I doing now? I do keynotes around the world. What does that draw on? My drama, my performance, my being on stage. What do I do now? I help people bring clarity and creativity into any business challenge. That comes from that part of me that I had squished down before. What do I do now? I help people find clarity and focus and deal with their own stress and their workplace stress through yoga and meditation as executives, which I never would have done before. So I'm taking these aspects of my yes ands, mindfulness, creativity, speaking, performance, and mashing that up with the geek in me, with the business consultant that I am. And it's an offer that is truly valuable to people. And I find joy in what I do. So that's one of the 4 lifter leadership mind shifts that we train people with very specific skills. Under each of the 4 mind shifts, we have 3 specific learnable skills in our training courses, whether it's a workshop, live, or the online course that we're offering.
Very cool. Very cool. So we're going to definitely link all this stuff up in the show notes, but how can listeners find out more about this Gearhead to Group Head and the Lifter Leadership Program?
Sure, John. We have, they can simply come to our website, which is, iamalifter.com, www, of course, iamalifter.com / a geek leader for your listeners. And we'll have some special kudos for you folks. We'll give you some freebies. And so it's basically iamalifter.com, iamalifter.com / a geek leader. And there you'll see some of my talks, which will give you a little more color on what we're talking about around this lifter leadership paradigm. And I'm telling you, it is the future. And if you get this, you will rock your career, and you will be, it's almost like if someone were to whisper in your ear 20, 30 years ago, hey, John, there's this thing happening. It's called the internet. You've got to get on top. You got to get on board. And imagine there was no such thing. And are you going to be someone who leans into that and go, really? Tell me about it. I got to get on board. I want to be a rock star. Or are you like, nah, that's not really going to happen. That's kind of weird and goofy. I'm declaring to you that this new era of consciousness is led by lifters. Lifters are positive people. They're purposeful. They're authentic. They're high integrity, and they're about serving rather than selling. And
I definitely think that's the next. That's the next phase when it comes to leadership. Is you get into service-based leadership. You become, what is it called? The servant leadership.
Servant leader. Exactly.
Where you're there to help other people. And by doing so, you're going to, improve your business. You're going to, draw customers in. You're going to be attractive to those around you when it comes to business and everything else. It's just the whole mindset, the way we evolved as people, is to help one another.
Exactly. And you're spot on there, John. We talk about, things like selling versus attracting. You just used the word attraction. That's one of the first lifter mind shift we call the hunt is over. Because it used to be, and I talk about this in my keynotes, when I was at Harvard Business School, I learned to be very effective at hunting for customers, targeting them, capturing them, segmenting them, analyzing them, so I could have my share and the competition couldn't have any, which is a very power-driven model, very kind of predator-prey transactional mindset. And we've evolved from there. There's nothing wrong with that. We've just evolved to the next level where lifters realize you don't need to hunt, target, capture, transact, get your share of that customer's wallet. No, lifters attract. We inspire. We serve, and ultimately we lift. And the subtitle of my forthcoming book called Lifters is Lifters are everyday, ordinary leaders who uplift their coworkers, their customers, their community, and therefore their company on purpose. Mm-hmm. And so if you come to imalifter.com/a-geek-leader, there'll be some talks there. We have a diagnostic around lifter leadership, as well as the Gearhead to Group Head Transformation Academy. You'll see that there as well. We've got a diagnostic to see what kind of a gearhead or group head are you. And we have a variety of training that we offer online. And of course, I give keynotes and I coach people individually so they can rock their career. And this can make such a difference financially, frankly, to get you into management and leadership faster and make sure you don't stall out with those other 8.3 million hungry STEM grads coming at you every year.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate having you on. I think it's been a great talk, and hopefully we'll inspire some folks to learn more about being a better leader and getting that lifter mindset.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure. And just one of the things that I'll just leave you all with is when we went through that exercise of those 7 deadly blind spots and, the images came to our mind of that person who micromanaged us, or, the person who couldn't manage conflict with us, or who was uninspiring. I want you now to put a mirror on yourself and say, have I done that in my work setting, in my family, on my sports team, in my faith group? And these skills, we actually have an 8th module, John. So we have the 777, right? The 7 great group head, the great group gearhead strengths, the 7 deadly blind spots, and the 7 essential upgrades. Then we have an 8th bonus module, which basically is how this applies to relationships, because all of these upgrades we provide make your relationships so much better. Like, who wouldn't want someone in a relationship who's a better communicator and listener, who's creative, who gets the bigger strategic picture of the situation, who knows how to deal with the human wildcard aspects, who's a great storyteller. So all of these skills apply not just to your business career and your technical career, but actually will help all of your relationships, and the ones that are, coming, to you in the future, flourish and succeed as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate it.
John, really appreciate you and all of your listeners, and here to serve. If anyone has any questions, imalifter.com/a-geek-leader. Be in touch with me. Sign up for our various offerings, and all the best to you and your listeners, John.
Hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Paresh Shah. And if you want to find out more about being a lifter and getting your diagnostic and some free videos and free stuff from Paresh Shah, go to imalifter.com/a-geek-leader, and you can get all that information, or just go to ageekleader.com/lifter, and we'll redirect you over there to get that information. And if you do run into Paresh or use some of his products, give him a big thank you from the Geek Leader Nation and from everybody out there that listens to a Geek Leader. I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for writing reviews and everything that you guys do. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much.